Hello and welcome to episode 303 of the Stacey West Podcast, and 303 is what you get if you multiply the total appearances that Conor McGrandles has made for Lincoln City at this moment in time by the number of goals that Luke Plange scored on his debut. A man who probably didn't score a hat-trick on his debut, given that he's a goalkeeper, and it was for Lincoln City under 11s, is Chris Lowing. How are you doing, sir?
Hi. Wouldn't it be funny if I did actually score a hat-trick on my debut? But sadly...
Did you?
Sadly, no, I did not. No. But I'm very well. How are you?
I'll be honest, I've had better weeks than this week. It's been challenging in places, but you know, we're still smiling and fighting on. So I got a new monitor, this big curved monitor that people have in, you know, like the stock exchange, or if you Ben, I got a new chair as well, which is quite comfortable. I've had the same chair for 7 years, so I thought I'd get a new one. So yeah, other than that,
well, I've got a new purchase.
Ooh, what you got?
Looks like I'm wearing a bra, but it's not a bra. It's a posture support thing. I've been so incredibly self-conscious about my posture recently after working from home now 4 days out of 5, rather than being a bit more out and about as I was before. And I found myself like really slouching in front of the laptop on this in here, and this is basically my office. It is the kitchen table, or quite badly in the lounge with TV on. And then like working at my coffee table, like slouched over like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So I've got this strap because I thought it's the least amount of effort I need to put in to fixing the problem, rather than actually just doing some exercise to fix my posture.
That is absolutely how I roll. Yeah, exactly. Least amount of effort, maximum output. Says the man who's weight training 4 times a week and running 3 times a week. But the thing is, it's different because you're still early 30s. So at the moment, you still have the benefit of health rather than waking up every morning with a different little bit of you that's aching.
I'm just chuffed a bit. You still could be early 30s.
You are, aren't you?
Well, very much mid, I would say. 34 in September, but I'll take
so 33 now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not 6. It's not where you say, "Oh, I'm 6.5."
No, I'm delighted by it.
You're early 30s.
I'm so used to being the old one wherever I am. I'm the old one at work. I was the old one at football all the time. That's quite nice to be known as the young one. It's great. Apart from Charlie.
When I was 33, I genuinely used to introduce myself as late 20s, 3 years late for my 20s. Didn't really get away with it. I mean, we used to play that game, you know, I don't know if you're in a nightclub with all your mates and that, and you sat talking to some girls and you play that, guess how old you are? And I shit you not, when I was 25, people were telling me I looked 34. So
I could beat that. I was 20 years old when I worked at David Lloyd Gym on Burton Waters. That was my first kind of proper job when I first got properly qualified. And I had, shall we say, a rough night the night before, but I was still 20 years old. I like to think I looked not a million miles away from 20. I was doing some training, and a guy came in who was... Hello, Charlie. A guy came in who was in his 40s. Shall we... I'll just pad for a bit, shall I? I'll carry on teaching my story. Guy was in his 40s who came to deliver the training, and he's telling us how to do it. And we all did this kind of test to get our kind of baseline, and then we was comparing kind of what the averages are for different age groups. He goes, Chris, you must be my sort of age. What did you get? I was like, I'm 20, mate. And then he went very red. He was quite literally double my age at the time. So I must have had a heavy night that night before. I must have looked bloody rough to look 40 years old when I was only 20. So yeah, 1-0 to me in looking worse, I think. If that's the competition that we were playing then.
Well, I think anybody at home, and there are 12 people who have managed to find time on a Thursday tea time when we've just dropped it on them. So thank you very much. Anyone looking at home who is judging the looking worse competition at this minute, please do feel free to put in the comments who you think, because I absolutely know that it's me. Genuinely, I've got more lines on my face than the London Underground map. So anyway, there's no comfortable segue to go into this. We're in 5 minutes. We are aiming for an hour because we've got lots to do, lots to go on. We've got 8 things to talk about. Now, I was speaking to somebody at the club the other day, and they apologised to me. They said, "Oh, sorry for keeping you busy," and I thought, "Well, you haven't kept me that busy." And then I looked back, and we have had 8 transfers in and out over the course of the last 7 days. So that's 1 a day. Technically, we've had more because technically on the 1st of July, Hacks and TJ left the club, and technically on the 1st of July, Jamie Pardington joined the club. But we've already discussed that. So that's done and dusted. But before we go any further, news that's literally just broken, and I do think this is brilliant, I've got to mention it, is Alex Woodyard. Because, look, people say I'm obsessed with Danny and Nicky. I don't care. But I don't care what people say. You know, they were brilliant for this football club. The players that they had were brilliant. They've got Tom Hopper there now. They've got Harry Anderson there now. And today, they've signed Alex Woodyard, released from National League York yesterday, walked straight into League Two, Colchester United. Which National League player do you think right now is sat staring at their phone, willing it to ring? Has Sean Raggett got a club yet? He went to Rotherham, didn't he?
He went to Rotherham, sadly, yeah. Alex Woodyard is Danny Cowley's Alex McDonald's to Steve Evans, isn't he? That's what you're kind of feeling you get. I hate to compare Danny Cowley to Steve Evans. That's so unfair. But in terms of he's got his boys. He's got the band back together, hasn't he? Yeah. Incredible.
I do just wonder if Luke Waterfall's there drumming his fingers on the side. Or Neil Erdley's there. I don't know whatever he's doing. He's at Blackpool coaching. He's wondering. Or, of course, Sean Long might be regretting his move. Now, you can just imagine all these players going, well, here we go. And there's one player that I guarantee is staring at his phone. Lee Angle. That's twice I mentioned Lee Angle in 7 minutes. He's got to be there going, come on, ring. Anyway.
Sure, that ship has sailed for him, bless him. I do wish them well, though. In all seriousness, I genuinely wish them well. I don't get any other kind of negativity around it. I think they're a league below. They're not part of our club anymore. Yes, what's been done has been done, but they got us here. And why would we not wish them well? So I do. Nope. I hope they smash it at Colchester. I really do.
Yep, Colchester will be my League Two team, and I never normally have. I don't look at League Two and think, "Ooh, I hope they do well," because it's Lincoln. It's like those surprise shirt things. Like I'll go in the surprise shirts thing, and they say, "Is there anything you don't want?" England. I'd never wear another football shirt from the English Football League. I wouldn't do it. I'd wear it practically any other. But Colchester United, I hope, do well.
Yeah. How do we segue from that?
We segue from that into we don't. We just start at the very beginning. I think it was last Friday. If it was, that's less than a week. Wow. He seems like he's been with the club ages. We're talking Tom Baylis, Thomas David Baylis, 25-year-old midfielder, has joined us on, I think it was a 2-year deal.
Yep.
Off the top of my head, I don't have that in front of me. So for those who don't know, he started at Coventry City. He was a massive talent at Coventry. Scored against us, did his famous shush after we beat them 4-2. From Coventry, he moved to Preston for a fee of around £2 million, loaned to Wigan, then went to Shrewsbury in a really surprise deal. But Shrewsbury was spending quite well then. They took Jordan Shipley there, I think, and Jordan Willis, who had also been at Coventry. So they were getting a band back together, which had never been together in the first place. 9 goals in 71 league appearances, a decent opening season for Shrewsbury. Not such a good season last season in a really poor Shrewsbury side. Signed for Lincoln City. And look, I always say this, there are no good or bad signings. There are good or bad players, and you can't judge right now. You always judge signings retrospectively, I think. It's the only fair way. But on paper, Tom Baylis, to me, looks like Ed Bishop did when he signed without the injury issues.
Yeah, it's definitely got pedigree. I suppose from a Shrewsbury perspective, they might not be massively disappointed to see him leave after a less than brilliant season last season. But like you mentioned, it was a less than brilliant season for the whole club. They were pretty poor on the eye, weren't they? I think they were one of the bottom 4 for kind of XG created. It was kind of, under Mark Kennedy at the start of the season when we spoke about all of our kind of attacking metrics being rubbish. It was kind of us and Shrewsbury that are pretty much the bottom 2 for those metrics. And they kind of pretty much continued that throughout the season. They were solid enough, but they just didn't create a lot. And their style just did not suit someone that wanted to get on the ball and make things happen. And that very much was Tom Baylis' game. So that's maybe a bit of an alignment issue between style of player and style of club. So on paper, I think he's definitely got the attributes that can play in that kind of advanced 8 or number 10 role for us. Basically a Ted Bishop, Danny Mandroiu replacement, I'm assuming. Very much that kind of attacking midfielder, good on the ball, good technical ability. You'd like to think in terms of the alignment that there's definitely a lot more there between our style and what suits him. It's just whether we can kind of rekindle that undoubted talent. You don't get a £2 million move earlier in your career for no reason. And he's only 25 still, which I think is, they've still got room to grow, or certainly room to rekindle that form of before.
Yeah, I like the fact there's a lot of League One experience there, because we do have a young squad. We do have some really talented young players around the squad, and we'll come on to another one that we've just signed. But in Tom Baylis, we've signed somebody who I think is a little bit more of a leader. The kind of the Conor McGrandles that we were lacking when he was injured, the Ethan Hamilton. When we signed those players last season, certainly Conor, the talk was very much we need to get some older heads in there to kind of pull some of the younger players together. And Tom Baylis is one of those older heads. Now, this takes me back to a Michael Appleton quote, madly, because I remember Michael Appleton saying experience was never about age, it was about games played. You could be experienced as a 22-year-old and inexperienced as a 27-year-old. So I like to think that in Tom Baylis, we've kind of gone for the sweet spot between being there, done it in League One, but still got plenty to go and plenty to do, rather than kind of being either one way or the other. Now, I'm going to compare him more to Ted Bishop than I am Danny Mandroiu, because having had a look at where he's played in the past, he isn't afraid to do a little bit of the defensive work. He said that in his interview. And I did a parody on TikTok about player interviews, because you know what you're going to get. I'm raring to go. Yeah, what do they get? I always give 100%. I like to get on the ball. I like to make things out. It's always the same. So you have to pick the odd little quote out that you think, that's a bit different. And when he said, I'm not afraid to do the defensive work, there is a perception, I think, with Tom Baylis, is this attacking player? He's going to play in that advanced role. So I'm quite happy, I think, that he can do that. I'm likening him a little bit to Ted Bishop, a little bit to Tom Pett, but potentially with a little bit more substance. I'm not going to say a little bit more quality, because it's going to be really hard to have more quality than Ted Bishop. Mm-hmm. But if it's comparable quality with, just having a quick look, games per season, 41 and 40 for Shrewsbury. So if you're getting 40 games a season, of that quality, then I think on paper, it's a decent signing.
Absolutely. Especially when, obviously, we've signed another midfielder this week as well, which we're going to be touching on. But we've got such depth in that part of the pitch now. We really, really have. So we've obviously got Ethan Erhahon, we've got Ethan Hamilton, we've got Conor McGrandles, we've got Tom Baylis, we've got JJ McKinnon as well. And I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Gallagher as well, I suppose, counts. But and we've just seen Smith leave the club. But we've got 5 players there that realistically you expect to be fighting over 3 positions. So what that means is, it's going to be tough to kind of hold down a first team spot. But it also means that he's not coming in with immense pressure on his shoulders to hit the ground running. We all want him to hit the ground running. We want him, all new signings, to come in, be fixtures in the first team. But I think what's really good here is that it just hasn't got that pressure around the signing that maybe we would have had a year or two ago should we have signed someone of his stature. And I just think that's a real kind of nice place to be for someone that I think would admittedly want to get their career back on track after a tough season. I think there's probably not many better situations to come into with, just maybe see the best of that and give him the best chance of that happening. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him maybe not start the season as a first teamer, but maybe grow into it. But for pre-season, we'll obviously tell with that, as will Ethan Hamilton's recovery from his injury, I suppose, just as much.
Yeah, of course. And my understanding was that Ethan probably wasn't going to be fully fit for pre-season. So I think we're going to be missing Ethan Hamilton early doors. So that does open the door for 1 or 2 players. Now, obviously, we will talk about Ethan Erhahon a little bit. There is a question coming, and we will pick up questions kind of once we've gone through some of the bulk of the stuff. So, if Erhahon did go and Hamilton didn't make it, actually, we then all of a sudden look a little short again, because you've got your Tom Baylis. But we've also got JJ McKinnon, John Joshua McKinnon, as he was christened by his parents. There's no middle name. I suppose Joshua's his middle name, quite like that. JJ McKinnon. So he has signed for us from Morecambe. He is 22 years old. Started out at Watford, had a brief loan at Bohemians, had a loan at Eastleigh. Now, I know some of the internet scouts, love them or loathe them, they're quite useful. There's Tom D. Williams. He was really enthusiastic about how McKinnon impacted Eastleigh while he was there. Really good at Morecambe, I think, last season. 33 games, 7 goals. I think he had a little spell out injured. Turned down a deal there, has come to us. He's Northern Ireland under-21 internationals, played 7 times for them. Now, the fee here is interesting because it is going to what is called a development tribunal. So it's not like the old tribunal. When Sean Raggett moved clubs, there was a committee of people who sat down and went, we think he's worth this. Ironically, I actually think that they were all friends with Jim Parmenter, who was the Dover chairman at the time. So we got a little bit done over Sean Raggett, I think. That's not the case. Morecambe will, the fee that we will have to pay Morecambe will be based on how much they've invested in his development, and he's only been there a year. So I'm not expecting that to be a particularly big fee. Now, it's a 4-year deal. I think that's really significant for a couple of reasons, which I'm sure we'll come on to. We'll discuss in a second. But first of all, I'll get Chris your initial thoughts on the capture of JJ.
Really excited by this one. Really excited by it. Exactly the sort of signing I expect Lincoln City, this version of Lincoln City, to be making. Ticks all the boxes for what we want in that position. Ticks all the boxes in regards to someone that can impact the first team now, but also has significant sell-on value, and we've got protection with that sell-on value with a long contract. Really chuffed to bits with this. Obviously, like you say, you can never judge a transfer until it's maybe a season after it's happened before you can see whether it's a good signing or not. But all the signs here are really positive. I think he suits us down to the ground. Good age at 22. Has impressed everywhere he's been in men's football, impressed at Eastleigh, and obviously significantly impressed last season at Morecambe. I think it's worth noting that their form took quite a bit of a dip after he got injured on New Year's Day. They were kind of a couple of points off the playoffs at the point that he got injured, and then they kind of fell away a little bit after that. So, one person doesn't make a team, but we all know what it was like when we were missing key players last season for us. So, there's not a lot to add here other than I'm just really excited by this. This is a good one on paper, like a really good one. And to be honest, I think the fee that we'll end up having to pay will look like an absolute steal this time next year, is my prediction.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, I'm not going to say a good or a bad signing, but having chatted around to a couple of people at the club this week, I get the impression that they feel there's a little bit more excitement around the people in the know rather than the general supporter. So I think people will look at JJ McKinnon, and if you look at League 1, League 2 stats last season, and you sign Jack Nolan, you go, bloody hell, yeah, look how well he did for Accrington. Whereas you look at League 1, 2 stats next season, JJ McKinnon, he's not really in there. I mean, he had that little spell out injured. He's obviously had a good time at Morecambe. Really quite well liked at Morecambe. Ben spoke to Dave Salmon. There's a YouTube video there that's worth watching. And they were really complimentary. I think he sounds like he's quite a good character to have around. As I understand it, there were other clubs coveting JJ, and there were other clubs willing to pay a little bit more money in terms of wages. But I believe he's kind of come here. He buys into Michael Skubala, who wouldn't. I'm not going to kind of make any bones about it. You talk to Michael Skubala for 10 minutes, he's a likable guy. You talk to Michael Appleton for 10 minutes or Mark Kennedy for 10 minutes, you're likely to either like or loathe them. They're either your type of person or they're not. There's nobody that will, in my opinion, that will sit down and talk to Michael Skubala and come away going, well, I don't like him. So, do you know what I mean? And he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He knows how we want to play. This is the Danny Mandroiu replacement for me. Always likely to be playing a little bit further forward, wanting him to get on the ball, wanting him to create. Might take a little bit of time to settle in. I'm not trying to say, like when Ted Bishop signed, everyone's going, oh, he's the new George Grant. I'm not trying to say JJ's the new Danny Mandroiu. I'm pretty sure he won't get sent off twice next season. But I do think that in terms of that kind of advanced attacking position, it's almost more of a kind of a Jack Moylan as we saw him at the end of last season than it is a holding midfielder.
Yeah, very much a forward-thinking attacking midfielder. I think I agree with you in regards to, if we're looking at replacements, Tom Baylis and JJ McKinnon are quite clearly the Ted Bishop and Danny Mandroiu replacements in the squad. I think there's more similarity between Baylis and Bishop than there is between Mandroiu and McKinnon in terms of style. Yes, yeah. McKinnon is a much better presser, just got a lot more physicality about him. I think no one can deny Danny Mandroiu's technical ability. but maybe there was some elements of his game which were not quite suited to how Michael Skubala wanted to play. I certainly, as you all know, I was very much a Danny Mandroiu supporter. But if you're kind of comparing the two, which kind of profile of player aligns most with our style, JJ McKinnon does more so than Danny Mandroiu does. Simple as that. So that's, for me, this is an upgrade. Even though Danny hasn't done anything wrong particularly, I think I'd have been pleased if he had signed. But for me, if you're looking at a like-for-like replacement, this is an absolute upgrade in that position on the pitch, or in that role, at least.
Another interesting thing about the pair of them, Tom Baylis 6 foot, JJ McKinnon 6'1". Last season when we went to Boston, you and I and a few of the others went to Boston for the preseason friendly, and we said, we've finally got some height, and we were looking at kind of Rico Hackett and Ali Smith, and those players were taller but didn't really use their height particularly. So I think that it's interesting that certainly with JJ McKinnon 6'1", I mean, he's not a small lad. I've watched some videos of him. I mean, technically, he looks very, very good. He's come through the academy at Watford, so that he is going to be decent. It's a basket case of a club, but it's a decent academy. They've put out decent players. But I think that physicality is something that perhaps we lacked, certainly under Michael Appleton in the second season of his, when we had likes of Luis Fiorini in midfield. Absolutely something that we lacked in Mark Kennedy's first full season, I think, in the midfield as well. So hopefully there's a little bit more to McKinnon's game than simply getting on the ball. Maybe a little bit more of an aerial threat.
Yeah, definitely. I think we started to see it this time last year. Last transfer window, we were quite clearly trying to add physicality and athleticism and height to the squad, because it was absolutely a weakness of us a couple of seasons before. What's interesting, I feel like we're adding a bit of both. We're adding physicality with quality. We could argue that maybe we've got one half of that with Ali Smith, but maybe not the other. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I think if you're comparing Ali Smith to JJ McKinnon and Tom Baylis, you've got that physicality, but there's no doubt there's certainly more established on-ball quality at this level. So, yeah, I think it's interesting that we're keeping that, because we want to press, we want to be aggressive, and that requires athleticism. And you don't have to be told to be a good presser. But you need to have that physicality around you. And it looks like these two signings at least have got that in abundance.
Now, we're talking about physicality, we're talking about pressing, and I know this is a signing that I think we're both quite excited to talk about, because it's almost like we're going to put some myths to one side, perhaps. We are talking all about incomings before outgoings, so we haven't done it chronologically. We're talking about what everybody likes, which is transfers coming in, which gives you the opportunity if you want to bugger off at half time. So that's we're looking after you all. Rob Street. Now, people who have been to presentations at the club know that Rob Street has been on the club's radar for a while. You can tell Chris is enthusiastic, because this is where the bit of paper comes in, as those who are watching at home will have just seen. So you're about to be bamboozled with numbers, but trust me, it's going to be worth it. Rob Street came through the Crystal Palace Academy, played 3 times for them in the EFL Trophy, scoring once, but didn't play for them in the senior competition. He was on loan at Torquay, 5 games, no goals, wasn't particularly successful, went on loan to Newport. They liked him, went on loan to Shrewsbury, 4 goals in 43. They liked him, went to Cheltenham. He only scored 3 goals in 26 games. He was out injured. They loved him. And now he's moved to Lincoln City. It's another 4-year deal. I want to pick up on that. I meant to do it under McKinnon. I'll pick up on it in a little bit when we kind of finish with Rob Street. Cheltenham fans believe that the fee, which we're led to believe could rise to 6 figures, so we're talking a 5-figure fee here. They thought that he was going to be worth around 400,000, which is what Will Goodwin fetched when he moved to Oxford. He ain't gone for a quarter of that. My understanding is, I'm not even sure if he's gone for an eighth of that. I mean, it's absolute steal. Doesn't mean he's good or bad, but usually you can judge whether a player is good or bad on the reaction that fans who have had him before, if they come on and they go, oh, well, he lacks a little bit of heart, or he's good at this, but he wasn't good at this, then fair enough. But I haven't seen a lot of criticism from Cheltenham fans, and he's not been a massive goal scorer for them. So, Chris, first of all, what do you think of the capture? And secondly, why is it so good?
Firstly, really interesting, because we've now got what you think as 5 first-team strikers in the squad now. Obviously, we've got Tyler coming back. We've got Ben House, who we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about here in comparison with Street, because I think that's where, in terms of style, he's most similar to him. we've obviously got Jovan and Freddie, who are, I think both would back themselves as certainly being first team squad players this season after their performances last season. And then we've got Rob Street coming in on a 4-year deal, who is quite clearly going to be a fixture in the first team squad. Whether he's a starter or not straight away, we'll see. But very interesting signing, mainly because it's another striker, and we didn't know if we were really needing one. We all like to sign strikers because we're football fans, and we all know strikers are sexy, aren't they? But
not Peter Beardsley.
Very true. Yeah, so I was interested in the fact we've actually spent money on a striker. You think we're not going to be investing unless it's someone that's going to be a fixture of in the first team in some way, shape, or form. And there's clearly a belief that he can really increase in value with the 4-year deal. So I think from just on the surface, it's interesting just signing anybody that fits that mold. I think the question marks for the armchair supporter, which is what most people are. Most of us just look at, for even us that like to look at statistics quite a bit. The first thing we look at is goals for strikers. Yeah, if they haven't got that many goals, you then might look a little bit deeper into the numbers and work out, well, what else is there? But it's still the first thing you look at. But his goal scoring record is poor. There's no denying that that's the case. I think what's worth pointing out about, particularly in our system, and I think Ben House epitomised this, is playing in that front line for Lincoln City and the Michael Skubala team. It ain't just about scoring goals as a centre forward. It is starting the press. It is like Ben has been commended by all of his Lincoln City managers so far about his tactical intelligence. And in terms of style, Rob Street is very much in the Ben House mould. So in terms of like ball recoveries in the opposition half, they're similar. In terms of duels won, they're kind of similar. So in terms of style, they are very, very similar. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a little look at not at how many goals he scored, because of course we know Ben's goal record is slightly better than Rob's, but of course last season it wasn't actually, hardly. But actually, let's have a look at their XG. We haven't mentioned XG for months.
No,
so here we go. Here we go.
XG.
Come on, XG.
XG.
So what I did is I had a look at total minutes played, both this season and last season for the previous 2 seasons. So for both Ben House and Rob Street. So their total minutes played rather than total matches played, and also their total XG. So that's the total of the quality of chances they create. And I think from a striker's perspective, one thing that is always apparent is that it's not about missing the chances, it's about being in a position to miss. Or Alex Ferguson's mentioned that, Danny Cowley's mentioned that. So the 2 best managers in the world ever have mentioned that, bar Michael Skubala. I think we saw that first time with Joe Taylor. Joe Taylor, had a few good chances in his first 2 or 3 games, couldn't hit the net. Once he got that first goal, then we all know what happened after that. Scored tons. And so I think maybe it's about, well, let's have a look at the chances that he's kind of getting on the end of here. How high a quality is that? And what's really interesting here is that their XG per 90 between Ben House and Rob Street is almost identical. So 2002-2003 season, Rob Street's was 0.22, Ben House's was 0.29, which over a season equates to 10 goals over a season for Rob Street, 13 for Ben House. Ben did score 12 goals that season, and Rob only got 4, so of course underachieving his XG, but we're looking at potential here, not kind of evidence. And then we're looking at last season, which is actually even more interesting because they're almost split around. So Rob's was 2.9 and Ben's was actually 0.23. So basically, both of them are pretty much on par in terms of the quality of chances that they're actually kind of getting on the end of. And there's no denying that we were a better football team than Cheltenham Town were last season, certainly, if not the season before as well, but certainly last season. So what these numbers suggest is that it's not all about goals, but actually the goals could well come here. I don't think he'll ever be the sort of centre forward that's going to be scoring 20. I don't think that's his game. I think he certainly could be in the 15 mark though over a season quite comfortably. But what I think the Shrewsbury and Cheltenham fans have kind of both said is that there's just so much more to his game than that. And again, in terms of profile, it definitely kind of suits us in regard to how Michael Skubala wants to play. Though I don't know if I can see him and Ben House playing together. I can almost see them being a a bit of an either or, and maybe a Rob Street being a long-term replacement for Ben House. Maybe this is all speculation now, isn't it? But let's just say best case scenario, Rob Street's playing second fiddle to Ben House this season. Ben has a great season, gets sold for £1 million this time next summer, and we've already got his replacement in the door with a year of kind of squad understanding already. That's kind of best case scenario, isn't it? But also he's going to push Ben, I think.
It is. I like all of that. I'm not going to go on about any more numbers because I could tell that you've done your research. I've done my research on Rob Street, but I've done it a little bit differently. Speed. Now, I had lunch with Roy Thompson, good friend of mine, yesterday, and he said, we need to get some speed in this squad. Pace is what does it. Joe Taylor had pace. We need pace. Chatting to people around the club, I'm told you've got a player here who's potentially faster than Rico Hackett from a standing start, which when you put that with that pressing, when you put that with chasing down a goalkeeper, how many times have we seen Ben House chase down a goalkeeper? Rob Street, I'm told, is faster than Ben House. So it does introduce an element of pace. Now, running in behind doesn't particularly feel like it's his game. But actually, we're getting players in early. Rob Street will be training with the lads, 2 days into pre-season training. And I firmly believe that even if a player comes to you with a certain profile, you can change that profile. Look at Zach Bradshaw. Comes at having played central midfield. Michael Skowala goes left wing back. You can change a player's profile. And
a success story of that, of course, is Lasse Sorensen.
So you can definitely do that. I want to touch on two other things. First of all, the 4-year deal. I think that it's really important to acknowledge this because I don't think that giving 4-year deals to JJ McKinnon and Rob Street necessarily is a bad thing. I don't think we want to be giving 4-year deals out left, right, and centre. But for me, it suggests that the due diligence on these two players is at such a level that we've gone, there is a real potential that these players could do better. And you would imagine with some protection for us with relegation, but obviously that's not something that we expect. So I think it's interesting. I think there's a degree of the board here really backing Michael Skowala, not in the amount of money that we're being given to spend, but in protecting and building a squad. So actually, maybe it's not even Michael Skowala. They're backing the club. They're going, we're building something here. We could see last season what we're building. Once Mark Kennedy had gone, the signs were there. Now let's do something to carry us forward. Let's make us like Oxford. And I mentioned this to somebody. It might have been in a conversation where Oxford on the cusp of the playoffs most seasons until they've gone up. James Henry, always there. Marcus Brown, regular player for them, on loan, then signed. Cameron Brannigan. These are players that are there year after year after year. And I think by giving these two players 4-year deals, you're either securing two players who could be a key part of a squad for a few years, or protecting yourself if they become like a Tariq Fosu or a Shannon Baptiste, who were at Oxford, given good deals and sold for several million. And finally, I think this signing makes a really important statement, and we wouldn't want it. I don't think it wouldn't be certain. But I think it says a lot about what formation we're going to play, because I think signing another striker really suggests to me that we're going to be two up top this season. I absolutely think that that's going to be the case. Now, how that looks further back at the minute, we don't know, because we've barely signed any defenders. The way things are looking, we're literally just going to go, 8 in midfield and attack and sod it. Well, the best form of attack is defence, so forget the defence. But I do think it makes a really important statement around, well, you've now got Ben House, you've got a Ben House replacement. So, or should we say alternative? I don't think replacement's the right word. Yeah. You've got Jovan, you've got Freddie, you've got Tyler, who I'm told has come back looking sharp. We don't know where he's going to be because it's returned from injury, but I'm told he's firing and ready to go. It's 5 strikers there, which is absolutely huge. So I don't know why Charlie's just popped in the green room, but I'll ignore that. So 5 strikers, which I think is an absolute steal as well. So they're my initial thoughts on Rob Street. Given the fact we've only got 26 minutes and we've still got quite a bit to cover, I don't know if you have any further comments on there at all.
I'll save them for another day.
You're saying for another day. Don Clark actually backs up kind of what we're saying here. Looks like we're going for a bigger squad with more quality, or we could be much better off the bench.
That's actually really sure. Go on.
It's a good point. I'm not sure we're going for a bigger squad, because actually I think we had a decent sized squad last season. I think we're going for a better squad. I think we're genuinely going for a point where you can look at a 19, 20, 21 players and go, well, any of them could play. And then that gives you the flexibility from the Saturday, the Tuesday, the 12:30 kickoffs, the 5:30 kickoffs. You're going to need that flexibility. You and I said the other night, as I beat you at pool again, I don't know if you remember that, but you and I said, as that happened, that it's not an 11-a-side game anymore. Football just isn't 11-a-side. There's 11 players on the pitch. I don't think I've ever been to a football. I've been to football in the last 4 years where it's been the same 11 that's finished.
No, I agree. I think the point, I didn't see who that was. I think it was Dom. Great point, Dom, in that that was actually the one thing I was going to mention. And then I best not, but this is definitely a good point. In that we've just got depth now. And not just a bit of depth. We've got significant depth in certainly in midfield and up front at the moment as it stands. And you'd like to think that the club are now going to press on with that defensive depth as well. Because without wanting to sound really harsh, because we were all so proud of what we did last season, particularly in the second half, it was that strength in depth that scuppered our chances. Ultimately, if we didn't pick up a couple of injuries or we had one or two players that were like-for-like replacements rather than square pegs in round holes, you'd expect that we would pick up one or two more points and get ourselves in the playoffs. And we were a better team than Oxford, and Oxford went up. So I'm wondering from a club's perspective, you think, okay, well, what can we learn from last season is that first starting 11 quality, we're not a million miles away, but it's the depth when things don't quite go right. You pick up injuries, you need to make a change. Did we quite have the strength in depth that maybe our competitors did have? And the answer, I think, if we had to be really picky, is no, we didn't. We didn't have that, and that is something that I think is really kind of changing at the moment. And I agree with the system, by the way. We're definitely going to go two up top with the amount of midfielders that we're signing. You expect at midfield 3. So unless you play a 4-4-2 diamond, in which case Rico Hackett and Dylan Duffy are kind of redundant, then you expect us to be in the same system that, let's be honest, served us so well in the second half of last season.
Yep, absolutely. Well, look, if you're listening in at home, we're about to go for a break. If you're watching, you can see me scratching my eye with the hay fever. But if you're watching, you won't get that break. So we'll go to the ads now. And we do put them in retrospectively on YouTube as well. So we'll come back in 3, 2, 1. So we still haven't done with the recruitment. Unbelievable. We are 37 minutes in. We still have 5 things to talk about. One believes that only really 2 or 3 of these are going to be significant discussion points. So we're going to go with an in, and that leads into an out. So in and out, shake it all about. And Zach Geacock will be shaking it all about a penalty area this season. He won't be doing it at Lincoln City by the sounds of things, but he will be doing it as a Lincoln City player. So Zach has come through the Birmingham Academy. He's been at Birmingham City, I believe, since he was 8 years old. I might be wrong there because I don't have it up on my screen. So I've got him as 2009, so 8 years old. I do have it on my screen. I am right. From Birmingham, he had loans at Stourbridge, Swifts, Gloucester City, Salford City, and then Gloucester again last year, which I believe is National League South or potentially North, because I know it's North, even though they're in the South in Gloucester. So played 28 games at Boston's level last season. He's 23 years old. He did play for England under 19s. As I understand that he had a little bit of a mare in a game against Belgium and got blamed for a goal. Played 4 times in the Championship for Birmingham, kept a clean sheet on his debut, but in his last appearance for Birmingham conceded 6 against Blackpool. Although, to be fair, I've watched some of them back, and I don't think you can blame him a lot. He's a big lad, 6 foot something. It's not on the screen. I think it was 6'5". Fits the profile of Jamie Partington, fits the profile of Lucas Jensen. I wasn't expecting another goalkeeper to come in, but it seems like he trained with us for a couple of weeks last last season. He's been in and around the squad. So he's a prospect, I think, potentially one for the future.
Yeah, very much like Partington, really. I think we've been operating with 3 first-team squad goalkeepers for the last couple of years now. Whether they've all been in the club at the same time is obviously not been the case, but there've been 3 that have been contracted to the club that are first team kind of quality, if you like, or certainly potential first team quality. We've seen Jordan Wright leave and Jamie Partington come in, so that feels like very much like a like-for-like replacement. And then we've got I've forgotten the guy's name now. Geacock come in, and and obviously Sam Long, we'll touch on in a minute, has left the club. So it's kind of like for like. We've got the 3. It was pretty clear in Jez's little statement about him, in that he's going to come in. We see him as a potential long-term first-team goalkeeper, but he's going to go out and play 40-plus games this season at a level that's most suitable, that's going to kind of almost guarantee that for him. For the first time in his career, he's going to be a foot number one for a whole season. He's got a 2-year deal plus an option of one extra, it seems. So, yeah, we've got a little bit of protection there. I think what this absolutely shows, though, is that, okay, we've brought in 2 goalkeepers, but they're both young goalkeepers. Neither of them are massively experienced. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be losing Lucas Jensen this summer. I think he is absolutely going to be staying this season. And if he loses on a free next year, then so be it. We'll have the value on the pitch. Thank you very much, Lucas, this season. Of course, football's a strange old game. Anything can happen. But that is my assumption from the 2 other keepers that we brought in and the profile they've got. So, yeah, very much prospect.
Now, I personally am not ruling out Lucas going, because I know, as with Ethan Erhahon and as with Lars Sorensen, the club have got a number, and the agents will have that number. And as the transfer window winds down, the clubs who have got that number might go, but we're going to have to meet that. So I'm not going to rule it out. I don't expect Lucas to leave. But I think that what we've done is we haven't gone, well, we'll bring someone in just in case. If Lucas goes, we probably do the loan market, where there is a little bit of quality. I see Zach Geacock and Jamie Partington as exactly the same profile as Jordan Wright. And what happened is Jordan Wright came in on a free transfer, served us diligently for a couple of years, and moved on for a profit. Not a huge profit. We're not talking like £1 million profit, but we're talking a profit. And I think that there's sometimes a little bit of a stigma around a player who comes in, doesn't massively impact the team, but goes on for a profit. And actually the business model, and I hate that kind of thing, but it supports that. It supports the Zach Elbazedi going for a nominal fee, the Theo Archibalds, the Jordan Wrights, players coming in, not particularly impacting the first team, but moving on. Don't think of players like a product, but any business, you don't always have to sell the big ticket items. It's like Dave's shop. Our mate Dave, he's got a shop, he's got stuff he sells, big ticket items. But the football badges that are £1 and go out for £2, they keep him ticking over as well. And that's almost, I see these players they're brought in. They might be brilliant. They might go on to play first team football. I'm sure we've brought Partington and Geacock in to challenge for the number 1 spot, see how they get on through the season. But if in 12 months' time that's not the case, and Jack Geacock's been out at, let's say, National League and played 35 games for Boston, or Jamie Partington's dropped in for 5 games at Lincoln, people are going to look at him just as Grimsby have at Jordan Wright and go, there for us. Jordan Wright joined us. He'd only played at Hereford and non-league before. And then he's transformed into he can be a League 2 goalkeeper with 20 appearances for Lincoln tops. So I think that's where I think that we're looking with this keeper.
Yep, I agree. I think it's a good backup plan. But like I said earlier, in that we haven't preempted Lucas Jensen leaving with these 2 signings. These are very much long-term signings. I expect Lucas to stay. I think I'm a bit more comfortable than you are with that, or confident, should I say? But yeah, agree. If he does leave, if someone does give us a silly fee that we can't turn down, then I think we go to the loan market rather than we throw one of these 2 in the deep end.
Sorry, I was just actually answering a comment that's come in, and it kind of fits in. So it's from Kate. Maybe a weird question, but should there be any worry that whilst we're getting profits for youth players, it's been a long time since one proved good enough to force their way into the team? I mean, it hasn't been that long, has it? Because Jovan McCarmer, Sean Rowan, Freddie Draper. So that was what I was just typing out. I'm not. No,
I agree with that. I think that's absolutely. That players that come in and made a big statement. Yeah.
I don't think it's a worry. I said in an article the other day, I actually think it's flattering for the academy that we're producing players who are going on to move to Football League clubs, League of Ireland clubs, rather than going for 10 games at Spalding, 5 games at Grantham, turning up at Sleaford on loan, all that sort of stuff. And Sam Long is another one. He's obviously gone to Bromley, a player we'll have a future interest in. A good goalkeeper. Sam is a good goalkeeper. I always had a little doubt whether his height would be a restriction. I know that you don't have to be tall to be a goalkeeper. Carl Rushworth kind of proved that. And I know as Goalkeepers Union with your smirk, you're not going to have any of that either. But Sam Long is the new breed of goalkeeper. He's good with his feet. He's good with his distribution. He had a great season at Falkirk. But I couldn't see him challenging Lucas Jensen. I couldn't see us going with 2 different profiles of goalkeeper. like if you're a football manager, you have the same profile of player as the replacement. So, we've got a centre-back, left-sided centre-back who's left-footed, we want the same. If you've got a left wing-back who plays high, you want the same. If you want a right wing-back who's going to slot in and play right-back, when you've switched to a 4, you'll have 2 similar. So, it was always going to be a question mark as to whether Sam was going to be Lucas's kind of number 2. But I think Bromley's a really good move for him. My understanding is he was quite happy there before we recalled him. He literally just got into the team. Their boy got injured. He got into the team, played once, and then we recalled him. So I think it's a good move for him. And I think it's testament to our kind of development of players that we've taken a player here who, came from an academy and has now gone on to be a professional footballer at a Football League club.
Yeah, League. I kind of forgot that Bromley were a League 2 club then for a second. Of course they are. I think it's a good move. I was a bit sad to see Sam leave, to be honest. I thought I did think there was potential there with maybe long term for him to potentially be number 1. Obviously, I'm always a little sensitive about height with goalkeepers, but I do honestly get it. Of course, we know how dominant Lucas was. The amount of times that he just plucked the ball out the sky off crosses, and it just takes that pressure away. It's something from a personal perspective I always wish I had in my locker, and I never did. And that was the one element. And I think Sam, it's not all about height, because you can have incredibly big leap and you can be great at claiming crosses, but obviously there is a link between height and that kind of dominance of your box, and that's probably one element that Sam didn't have in abundance. I would say he's much better with his feet than Lucas is. I think he showed that obviously at a different level, but showed that quite a lot at Full Cup particularly. I actually thought before we'd signed who we'd signed in terms of goalkeepers this season, I thought maybe Sam would be our number 2 this season. He has played a bit in the last season, so he's got that game kind of experience, and he might come and sit on the bench for us this season. I get your point about profile, but also it's someone that was already in the building, that was ours, that had developed us, knew us. You'd like to think knew our system. You'd like to think, or at least elements of it. With Lucas only having a year left, I was thinking if there was a long-term investment in Sam, or a long-term pathway, there we go. That's 2 big things. Got XG and pathway in one podcast. Then maybe that would be a natural progression for him to take Lucas's spot if and when he leaves next summer. That was kind of the thought I had. But once we kind of quite clearly were investing in the goalkeeping department, and they're all similar profile in terms of stature, aren't they? It started to look like Sam maybe wasn't quite at the pecking order like I thought he might have been. So to go to League 2, only 1 league below, without ever any experience in that level as well, at a club that he's albeit not played much, but certainly has some experience with the players, the manager particularly, and the area. Let's not forget there's all the off-field stuff as well, isn't there, in terms of feeling comfortable in your surroundings. I think it's a good move for him. We've got a future investment. I can see him being a success at Bromley, but I can't see him making us loads of money because no one pays big fees for League 2 goalkeepers. But yeah, a good move all around, I think, if he's not going to be a fixture here. But I was a little bit sad to see him go, I have to say.
If nobody pays big fees for League 1 goalkeepers, then hopefully Lucas Jensen will be here for another season. Now, we are still talking about exits, and I'm going to mix up the order that I've got them in because I don't want to leave a player till last and do him a disservice because it's Ali Smith. So Ali Smith has joined AFC Wimbledon on loan. I haven't got Jez's quotes in front of me, but they essentially said, we need him to go out and get football. His contract's up at the end of the season. Best of luck, Ali Smith kind of thing. So it's a very much a Hakeem Adelakan to Doncaster thing, off you go. Thanks very much. Now, some might find this a surprise. He signed last season. He played almost every game. I think it was he only missed one squad that he was eligible for, which I can't remember the game now, but he missed one squad, and that was under Mark Kennedy, and he only missed 2 games, and he was on the bench for one of those games, and then he went out on loan. I think he's been really unlucky, if I'm honest, because I just think he signed, and we had better players in his key position, and he then he wasn't then able to kind of thrive in any other position. AFC Wimbledon, a good loan for him. It's back closer to where he played well at Sutton. It's a similar profile of club there, I think, to Sutton. A little bit more established, potentially, but, that kind of relatively small London club. I hope that AFC Wimbledon fans don't take that offensively. They are obviously bigger than Sutton, and those of us who are old enough will remember them winning the FA Cup in 1988. So they have been around for a long while. But yeah, it's an interesting move, isn't it, for Ali?
Yeah, I think we expected him pre-season or end of the season, for him to come back here and maybe fight for a first team spot. But I think since we've recruited such a significant number of midfielders and midfielders who have got a proven track record at this level, which Ali hasn't. He's played a lot of games. He hasn't played a lot of games at centre midfield at this level at all. The only player that we've signed that doesn't fit that bill is JJ McKinnon. But I would say there's probably a little bit more hype around JJ than there was Ali. And obviously completely different players in terms of their style. I just thought, I felt like I quite like the idea of Ali Smith. I was quite excited by the signing last season. It was exactly at the time the sort of signing that I thought Lincoln City would be signing. Athletic player that's going to add some kind of physicality to the midfield. But just, like you say, was never given the opportunity to stamp a starting place in the centre of midfield. And I assumed the loan last season to go to Colchester was there for that reason. Okay, just so you know, everybody, Gary's just left the room, so he's left the dog out. So I'll keep talking about Ali Smith. So ultimately, what I was going to say is I thought he'd come in and potentially fight for a place, but I couldn't see a starting spot for him here. So he would probably be left in very much a similar position as he was last season, if not further down the pecking order, but with fewer opportunities to fill in elsewhere. I think what happened last season is he filled in elsewhere because we had injuries up top. He did, without being brilliant, he did okay. And we didn't have anyone else to play there. So he kept playing there. Because of that, he never got an opportunity to play centre midfield. And then when the January transfer window opened we got players back, he was then left out of the squad and he went to play centre mid. And I think he's just a bit of a victim of circumstance, to be honest. But good opportunity to go and play week in, week out. But at a level he knows he's kind of pretty good at. So good signing for Wimbledon. But this is absolutely not a loan with a view of him coming back and getting a first team spot. This is a loan for him to play week in, week out this season till the end of his contract with Lincoln City, and then he's free to go and find another club after that.
And really, this is an example of what we've been saying about Baylis, McKinnon and Street as well, is on paper, somebody can come in, and I'm sure you and I raved about Ali Smith last season. Looks good, creates goals, scores goals. He scored from long distance, if I remember, in the friendly in Spain. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes certain players don't fit. He had a good time at Colchester, but I look at Ali Smith. I looked at some of his performances for Lincoln. And I do wonder if what we're talking about here is a player who, if he's going to step up into League One, it needs to be with a club that plays absolutely to all of his strengths. Some players can adapt. Some players, you can step up and you can shuffle them around a little bit. They can change position. But Ali Smith, I think, plays his position, and that's kind of that. So two other exits. And the first one we will go on to is Hayden Can. So Hayden, been with Lincoln City since he was 8 years old. Loan spells at Gainsborough, Lincoln United, Gainsborough, Peterborough Sports and Drogheda, off the top of my head. I'm not sure if I've missed one off there at all. Certainly highly rated wherever he's been. I know they loved him at Peterborough Sports. They loved him at the Drogs. And he has gone to Dundalk, I believe. So he's signed a professional deal with Dundalk, and he's going to get regular football. It will obviously be an uplift in wages for him. Really interesting to see that we have a buyback clause. Not really sure what the details on that are, but that suggests that there is a little bit of a belief from us that there's potential for Hayden to go on and do better. But at some point, these younger players, you have to make that kind of challenging decision. What is best for them? Charlie Kendall, what was best for Charlie Kendall? Well, it was going out. Has he gone and smashed it? No. Whereas with Hayden, I personally liked what I saw when I saw Hayden Can play, and it was pre-season friendlies, it was clips of Drogheda. I really liked it, but the club clearly don't feel that at this stage in his career he's going to be a regular League One player. So it's almost like a roll of the dice, and it's just another example of the academy. And I know Kate, touching on what Kate said about players not coming through and not being proven and not being good enough to play for the first team, but the academy is there to create footballers and not necessarily all going to be Lincoln City footballers. So for every Freddie Draper, Jovan McCarmer, Sean Rowan, there's going to be a Hayden Can, a Leachery Huey, Morgan Worsfold Greg, who kind of go off somewhere else. The fact is, Hayden's gone to the top flight in Ireland. Say what you like about the quality, it's still the top flight in Ireland. They were delighted to get him, reading their manager's comments. And we've just protected ourselves as well.
Yeah, it's the buyback element that's really intriguing here. Wasn't surprised to see Hayden leave the club permanently. I think I'd have been equally surprised to see him sign another 1-year extension and go on loan somewhere. But like you say, he's done that a couple of times now, and at some point, it's a difficult decision. You've got to do what's best for the player. And I think, Hayden's a Lincoln boy, Lincoln fan. You'd assume, you'd expect he'd want to play for his local club, but there isn't the pathway at the moment. We've got far more established players in that position at the moment we have. And I imagine we're going to be looking to add in that position. It's not as tough as goalkeeper, but it's the second most difficult position to kind of establish yourself as a young player, is at centre-back. So what's interesting here is that, we often mention we've got a future interest in these players that are leaving, which means if they do go on and do well, then we'll make a profit. What I think is really interesting here is we have that plus this buyback. Now, obviously, we don't know what the fee is, but knowing a bit about what kind of the average sort of fees are for players leaving, established professionals leaving the Irish Premier League, it's normally a 5-figure fee. So I'd imagine, what if he does go on and do brilliantly? And I think, well, he's had a year or two there. He's impressed significantly, actually. If he wasn't an ex-Lincoln City player, would we be scouting him thinking he could come in and do a job as a first-team player for us? If the answer to that question is yes, and we've got a fee that's agreed with Dundalk that they literally have to accept, regardless of what his value is at that point, to bring him back, I think that gives us a really, really good opportunity. And it gives him a route back as well. It's just, it's not a loan, it's a permanent deal. So it gives him the flexibility then to go and progress his career however he wishes. But while he's at Dundalk, we have a little bigger than a little bit more than a vested interest in that. I think that's really, really interesting. I've not known us ever have that in any modern transfer that we've
not had it announced.
Or at least that, of course, yeah.
Interesting question. Genuine answer just off the top of your head. How many senior appearances do you think he's made?
Are we including the trophy?
In all his loans and everything.
Oh, right.
Just for us, all his loans and everything. Just roughly off the top of your head.
70.
113.
Wow.
He's 20 years old and has played 113 senior games. 28 for Peterborough Sports, 19 for Drogheda, 42 for Gainsborough, and then 7 for Gainsborough in his first spell, and 15 for Lincoln United, 2 for us. And he scored 8 goals. So, what we've got here, again, we're talking about the academy. Previously, you'd let a defender go like a Phil Watt or something like that, and he kind of floats around 20 games here, 20 games there. We've got a player here who's 20 years old, and he's been valued high enough by other clubs to play 113 times. I think that's interesting. We're going to move on.
At centre-back.
At
his age. I think that's the key. It's not just a centre-forward to come on that could play on the wing as well. This is someone who's established himself clearly as a good player at the level he's been playing at 18, 19 years old. That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Really quickly, because I want to go back to a question we were asked at the beginning of the broadcast as well. So really quickly, Alicia has joined Drogheda. No talk of a buyback. I had high hopes for Alicia. Obviously, again, we saw him at Boston. Okay, it's easy at Boston, but I thought he did well. He came on, did well against Newcastle in the under-21s game in the EFL Trophy. Didn't really go for him well at Ayr. When you go out to Ayr and then come back and go to Peterborough Sports, that's a kind of a backward trajectory, not a forward trajectory, in my opinion. But again, a decent enough move for him, and we've got a future interest.
Yeah, not as interested in this one as I was Hayden because of the lack of the buyback. That was just really interesting. But yeah, I think it was just that loan at Ayr, I think, was really tough for Alicia. And if he was going to, because he had a great loan at Drogheda, didn't he? Let's not forget that before that loan to Ayr, and it looked like he could potentially be one that kicked on and pushed on. But he was at the same stage of his career as Hayden was, in that he was out of contract. So we had a choice: do we offer him a new deal? Is he quite ready to be back up as a wing back for us in this system that we're currently playing? Probably not quite there. And then does he go out on loan again? But he's kind of been there and done that 3 times now. That's, like I say, at some point you have to stick or twist, and I suppose we've decided to twist here rather than stick.
Twist. Let's twist again. One player we hope will be twisting again for Lincoln City at some point this season is Ethan Erhahon. Now, there was an exclusive out there from one of the journalists, I don't know who, saying championship clubs are interested in Ethan Erhahon. Really? Santa's interested in Christmas. I mean, honestly, it's kind of like a given. people are going to be interested in. We know that it's out there. People have said it. There's a price tag. You would imagine that price tag is 7 figures. The question that we've been asked is, if offers are going to come in for Erhahon and his head gets turned, is it worth selling him now or wait for more money at the end of the window through a panic buy that leaves ourselves potentially short? Now, I don't think I think that there's a fundamental within that question. His head won't be turned. He wants a championship move. It was part of the agreement when he came here that he came here in order to progress. There's no doubt about that. It's not that he's here and he's a Lincoln player and he might have his head turned. His agent, it's been told quite openly, has got a number, and if that number's met, he'll go. I suppose the question, but at the end of the day, we can't dictate when that number's met.
Yeah, I think what's a couple of things to point out there is that he has desired to be a championship player, not necessarily he wants a championship transfer immediately. I think that's probably a big distinction to make. Is he wants to be a championship footballer, and the move to Lincoln City was a vehicle to try and facilitate that. Whether that is with Lincoln, which is what we all want, or whether that is he comes here, does well, and he moves on for a fee that's significantly more than what we paid. Everybody wins in that situation as well. That's how football works, particularly at this level, how it should work if you're a smart football club. We are very much a club here, which is a development football club. We want to try and develop ourselves along the way and keep taking those kind of baby steps forward. But ultimately, a huge part of that is signing players that improve us now, improve themselves, and move on. And Ethan Erhahon is probably the best player I've ever seen that has the potential to do that in a Lincoln City shirt. I hope he stays, of course. If he leaves, though, I wouldn't say we are massively short. Now, we haven't, of course, got a like-for-like replacement. And I'll be honest with you all, I don't think it's possible for us to sign a like-for-like replacement. I think we struck gold when we signed Ethan Erhahon to find someone who is already championship quality that wanted to come and play for, at the time, a mid-table League One football club on a 4-year deal, I think it was at the time. I think we just absolutely struck gold there. Credit to the recruitment team for it, but I think it's gone better than anyone could have expected. If he leaves, I can't possibly see a situation where it is not for a significant fee. And by that, I mean well over 7 figures, smashing the transfer record that we've sold a player for. And then we've got a good few quid to reinvest. But I don't think we'd see a reinvestment in, let's go and find another Ethan Erhahon, let's pay £500,000 for someone that's a holding midfielder. I imagine we go and we buy 2 or 3 players that can improve the whole squad, and we use the players that we've already got in here, maybe one other, to make do and to kind of cover for Ethan. Because we mentioned earlier, we've already got strength in depth in midfield. The players that we've signed have given us real depth there. Yeah, no one's a like-for-like replacement, but there are other players that are capable of playing in that role. Or we could even play two 6s with a 10. It's still a 3-5-2, but it's just a slightly different shape of it. And we've definitely got the squad to be able to do that. So want him to stay, but if he goes, I don't think there'll be any head turning going on. It's very much, there's a fee that the club are well aware of, that his agents are well aware of, that if it's met and it's a club that suits him, he's off. But also, there's not I don't think there's a burning desire that he has to move now. It's just that if that bid comes in, brilliant. We all know what the situation is. If it doesn't, great. He's going to stay here and try and become a championship footballer by playing for Lincoln City this season. I think it's a win-win situation for everybody.
My honest opinion, I don't think we'll kick off the season with Ethan Erhahon in the squad. Because I think as the season gets closer and teams begin to put their kind of bids together, I can see bids coming in for him. The big question is, what do you do if Birmingham City put a 1.2 bid in? And would he go there? Because let's face it, he turned down more money at Forest Green to come to Lincoln City because that was his career trajectory. So that would be the only instance where you would talk about the head turning. Because would moving to Birmingham represent a better opportunity at promotion than us? Potentially, yes, because they've just paid £16,000 a week for Alfie May. But it isn't the step up. I think he moves into the Championship, and I think if the number comes from Birmingham, I think it's very different. I'm not saying Birmingham are linked with him at all. I'm just saying that's the only question, isn't it, as to whether it's Peterborough go, well, we've got 1.2 million. Does he go to Peterborough? In that instance, I don't think so. I think he only steps up, not sideways.
I think that's where the fee becomes more important. I imagine we'll have a ideal fee in our mind and then what we would accept. I can't imagine us wanting less than 1.5 million for him. And Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think if a League One club, just like it did with last, if a League One club comes in and offers 1.5 million, you have to. We can't turn that money down. Is it Lincoln City? You can't. If someone came in and offered £1.5 million for Ethan right now, if Billy Forest Green came and offered it now, you can't say no.
Does he turn it down though? That's the question.
Whether he wants to go there or not, and that's that. From what we know about Ethan's character and his preferences and values, like you say, he chose us over Forest Green, despite the fact that he'd be earning less here. You'd imagine that he probably wouldn't be as interested in that than if a Coventry came in for him or a Hull, someone along those lines. Even if they were offering less money wage-wise, you'd imagine that it's the Championship move is what he's really looking for. And you know what? Watching Scotland at the Euros, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets in the Championship, he'll be in the Scotland squad.
Yeah, 100%. The question, one question is simple. Yes, simple. You've got to pick one of the teams. You're Ethan Erhahon, 2 deals on the table. Both meet our asking price. Wages are comparable, but the League One club are offering slightly more wages. Plymouth are one club, Birmingham are the other. Where do you go?
I can't just give you one word answer, guys.
Well, it's either Plymouth or Birmingham, isn't it? So it's one word.
It goes against everything I've just said, but Birmingham.
Brilliant. That was episode.
If it was most other Championship clubs, I'd have said most other Championship clubs. It's just that Plymouth, under Wayne Rooney, I have no faith in that at all. As being a sustainable Championship club. I like Plymouth Argyle as a football club. They're a good football club, but I don't think Wayne Rooney is a very good football manager at all. And I can see them struggling this season. And I can see Birmingham either doing a Sunderland and struggling this season with thinking they've got a divine right to go up, or they'll get up with like 110 points. So if you're comparing those two, which two clubs have got the highest potential? Birmingham have. I just hope we haven't got to make that decision, or Ethan hasn't got to make that decision.
Well, we don't have to make that decision. It's going to be up to the football club. It's going to be up to Ethan if he goes, if he stays. One thing I do know, I don't think there'll be another podcast this year where we have to talk about 8 different transfers in a single podcast. I think we've done remarkably well to keep it at an hour, 7 minutes, considering the last 7 minutes we've been talking about a player who hasn't left the football club in Ethan Hamilton. I'm going to go and eat whatever smells really good through there. And I'm also going to chastise my dog for being in and out here more than Max Sanders was in and out of the first team under Michael Appleton. Chris is going to go and have a FAB meeting, a fan advisory board, and no doubt try and eat something in between. You're all going to go away and think what a treat it was to see those two handsome fellas talking about Lincoln City on a Thursday evening. If you're listening in at home, you've had an even better pleasure because you don't have to look at us while you listen. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, I'd like to think that we've been good. You have, as always, been brilliant, and we will be back next week. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.